Okay, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started with our webinar this morning. So thank you very much for joining us today. Welcome to our TEI webinar. The focus of this webinar is finding the right strategic response to the crisis in your business. Some of you might be asking, what crisis? Well, wake up if you don't know what's going on here. This webinar is made possible by the Entrepreneurship Institute. Several of us have been involved in the Entrepreneurship Institute for a while. It's been around since 1976, and it provides guidance to CEOs, presidents, and small and mid-sized companies, typically through the CEO Forum, which is an event that we do in the fall, and we're in the planning phases for that right now. The President's Forum is an annual conference of high-powered peers, backed by a powerful network of helpful entrepreneurs and expert service providers, and they hold these events all over the United States. And the whole purpose of the mission of TEI is to provide valuable insights, practical solutions to key challenges, and so on and so forth. And what we've been doing for the past few years is a focused breakfast in the fall, and we normally do it in May, but this year, because of the coronavirus pandemic and how it's affecting all of our businesses, we've decided to move it up to April. And so you are here because one of the sponsors of TEI here in Houston has invited you. Each city has a board of what TEI does is they pick some of the best service providers around the country and put on these local events. And so all of you are here because one of the people on the screen has invited you. So thank you to my fellow board members of TEI here in Houston. I'm going to read through them real quick. Adams and Reese, Boyer Miller, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, BB&T, Briggs & Paselka, Brand Extract, Colliers International, Chief Outsiders, CTS, Houston Business Journal, Insperity, Harper Pearson, INS Group, Marsh & McLennan, Pierpont Communications, Prosperity Bank, Texas, Center for Growth, and VCFO. So we appreciate you being here this morning. Normally we meet face-to-face, but due to our current social distancing situation, we're having to meet virtually this time. However, we are confident that you're going to get some value from this today and how to operate your business both during the COVID-19 pandemic as well as post. And we're going to talk about maybe what it looks like. You know, this particular crisis is a little bit different because it's something we've never dealt with in the past. Number one, it's worldwide, so it's not regional like hurricanes and floods and those types of things. It's affecting every segment of the market. It's affecting every industry in the market, and it's affecting every individual out there as well. At the same time, here in Houston, we're also dealing with depressed oil prices. And this price disruption is also different from other disruptions we've had in the past because it's not only caused by supply side issues, but also has demand side issues as well. Every business is different. And as in every situation, there'll be winners and losers from this. The good news is that the world will get through this crisis eventually, just as we've gotten through every other market disruption in the past. But the question is, which companies will make it out the other end successfully, which ones won't, which ones will be stronger on the other end, and which ones won't as well. So we have 3 segments to our program today, and I'm going to run through those real quick. The first segment we're going to be doing is an economic overview from ITR Economics. The second segment is a panel of experts who will discuss how you can make the right decisions so that your business comes through this crisis as one of the winners in both the short-term, mid-term, and even the long-term. And I'll be moderating that session. I'll introduce the panelists on that when we get to that point. And then section 3 will be a Q&A period with the speakers and all of the panelists on the session, and that session is going to be moderated by Chris Ferris from Pierpont Communications. So a few logistics for our breakfast today, our luncheon this morning. Breakfast is available if you arranged it yourself. Sorry that we can't provide you with our normal lavish breakfast buffet, but hopefully you have your bowl of cereal or your kolache with you. Restrooms are, well, you know where they are better than I do. In your, so a couple of things. In your Zoom panel, there's 2 key areas to be aware of. You'll notice in your Zoom panel down there that there's a Q&A button on your Zoom window. If you click on this button, you can enter questions for either Alan from ITR or one of our panels. You can enter the questions at any time, but they're going to be answered during the Q&A portion of the presentation. Chris is going to be monitoring the questions and will queue them up for the panel. If someone enters a question you also want to have answered, please use the upvote button on the question so that rather than entering the question again, so Chris can get an idea of some of the most burning questions to bring up in case we start running short on time towards the end. The other button that I want to call your attention to is a chat button down there in your Zoom window. So you click on this button, you can communicate with the audience members, your fellow audience members, either as a group or one-to-one. If you have a comment to offer, you want to interject your thoughts, please use the chat window to do that. Everyone that's on the panel can see that if you send it to everyone. One caveat, please do not enter your questions that you want for the panel to ask into the chat button. Chris is only going to be monitoring the Q&A box for the questions. He's not going to be monitoring the chat box for those. Another question that is always going to come up is, do we get copies of the presentations? And the answer is yes. Alan Bolio, who is with ITR Economics, has offered to make his presentation available to all of the attendees, as have all the other panelists as well. You'll get those later in an email from TEI. So with that, let me introduce Alan from ITR Economics. Since 1948, ITR Economics has been providing business leaders with economic information, insight, analysis, and strategy. ITR Economics is the oldest privately held continuing operating economic research and consulting firm in the United States. With a knowledge base that spans 6 decades, they have an uncommon understanding of the long-term economic trends, as well as the best practices ahead in changing market conditions. And their reputation is built on accurate, independent, and objective analysis. Alan Bolio is the president and principal at ITR Economics, and for 25 years has provided in-depth economic consulting and presentations around the world. So Alan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, and thank you very much, Rusty. I appreciate it. And good morning, everyone. We're going to talk about the economy, obviously, but I want to set the stage for you here. We're going to end with the forecast. I want to show you why we've come to where we are, so you have a basis for it, a foundation. We're going to talk about the virus, obviously, that's part of this. But we're also going to talk about the government response, and mostly the U.S. government response, but we're going to look at some of the global things. We're going to look at why we've come to the conclusion that we've had. We're going to talk about oil briefly, because that's the second black swan. There are 2 black swans here. One is the coronavirus. The other is the oil war troubles that is going on because of Saudi Arabia and Russia. And then we're going to come to a conclusion, I hope together, about what it all means. One of the things that I'd like you to do is feel free to ask questions. We'll get to that, obviously, in just a few minutes. Let's start in with where we want to go. These are the daily new confirmed cases. Now, not everybody likes this screen because they say, well, the testing is incomplete and some countries test different than other countries. And you're right, I know all that. That's perfectly valid. But what I hold to is that there's a certain consistency in the inefficiencies. And therefore, it is a gauge. It is not to be absolutely relied upon, but it's a gauge. You'll also notice this is a 3-day rolling average. We use that methodology a lot at ITR because it takes out noise. And as we look at it using just a bit of a smoothing technique so the trends make more sense, you can see that the United States, that top blue line, we seem to be on the back side in terms of daily new confirmed cases. That's great news. That's why governors across the country are talking about plans now to turn the economy back on. That's certainly good news, and we'll get to that in just a moment, but we certainly enjoy that. And look at Italy on the way down. We look at Spain on the way down. I mean, there's just good news around the world in terms of new confirmed cases. So as Rusty said, we will get through this. Actually, I would put it into present tense. We are getting through this. And you can see that as new cases go down, so do deaths. This is the world daily death per day and the accumulation. But what I wanted you to see is the red bars, the daily death rates. Let me throw this in there before I step on toes. I'm an economist, which means I'm short on feelings to begin with. And I can't think about the people that are involved, because if I do that, then I will want a certain outcome. And I can't do that. I have to have a cold analytical view. So these are numbers. So as we look at these numbers, what we see is that for 7 days, we've been past the peak for 7 days. Let's put it that way. And as we're past the peak for 7 days and the number of confirmed cases seems to be going down, that means that we're passing through this now as we speak. So it's not a question of will we get through it, we are getting through it. The death count is well below what all the algorithms, the professionals were talking about. It's not going to reach anywhere as close to that. We're not going to see 200 to 600,000 Americans die from this, at least not from what we see today, not we see the trends that we see today. So, and most of you know, I'm sure, but let me just remind you, this is protecting people who are over 65 years of age. The deaths come in 65 and above in the vast majority, 71.7% if memory serves me correctly from the CDC. Over 55 is 90.7% of the deaths. So over 55, over 65, this is protecting that segment of the population. The young, we're not really in danger. 85% of people don't even know they have the virus, or they have a really mild case of it, some aches, some pains, some mild discomfort, not even close to needing to see a doctor. Therefore, the confirmed cases number is off, agreed, but it shows you the lightness of this, despite all the fear that if I get it, I'm going to die. Couldn't be further from the truth, especially if you're below 55 and do not have a comorbidity problem. But nevertheless, the government ordered a shutdown of non-essential businesses, which is an irritating term. And they told us in most of our states, all but 4, that we have to stay home, should stay home. If you're in Florida, you can get fined for violating curfews, that sort of thing. It put a halt to the economy. You couldn't have stopped it any faster. That was throwing a switch that said, we're done. And so when I read that people are really surprised by 22 million people collecting in the unemployment line, I'm going, what do you expect? The government just shut it down. It's going to happen. So the Financial Times, New York Times, excuse me, said today that it's a staggering number. And I thought that's idiot reporting. It's a very large number. Well, what would they expect? It's just moving in a very normal way. We're not going to see 20 to 30% unemployment. I will let you know that right now. It will be high. The unemployment rate will be high, but we will have seen higher. This is not the Great Recession. This is not going to be the Great Recession in terms of depth and duration. This is not a new Great Recession. It is not a new Great Depression. And for those out there that are saying this is going to take years to come back from, I take exception with them, and I want to show you why, and it begins here with the Federal Reserve Board. The Federal Reserve Board is truly amazing in what they have done. I think they learned very well from 2008 and 9. What did we do wrong? What did actually work? What should we have done? Those types of questions, and they've done it. Now, as you glance at this, and you'll look at this in depth later, I want you to note 2 things. It's all about credit markets. They're making sure credit is available to businesses. And as they do so, it's about keeping the economy going. It was a credit crisis last time, and they're doing everything to make sure we don't get that credit crisis again. The Main Street down at the bottom is over $2 trillion. There is so much inflation of their balance sheet going on. The big question is what's going to happen later. We don't have time in 15 minutes to get to that. When we look at the zero requirements in the third bullet point from March 15th, that means that banks can lend it all. They don't need to keep anything in reserve. So if you have good credit, it's a perfect time to go get some money. Interest rates are low, and you're going to be able to put money into your business so you can get ready for the other side. Because there is another side, and it's not far off. So take advantage of this and what's going on. And of course, Congress with the CARES Act put $2 trillion out there as well, adding significantly to our budget deficit and to our national debt. That is not going to create a problem for right now either. Just take that one off the table. We'll be talking about that later here at ITR. Go to our website and you'll just find blogs and such on that information. We have a normal yield curve back. So for those of you that follow that and were freaked out by the inverse yield curve, it's back to normal, which is a good sign for the future. So we have $2.3 trillion from the Fed going out there made available. We have the Fed backstopping the PPP. We have the CARES Act making money available to individuals, to small businesses, large businesses, to state and local governments. It's like everybody went back to 8 and 9 and said, what should we have done? And now they're doing it. Kudos to them, by the way. This is a major factor and why we're not going to see this as a long, drawn-out, protracted recession like we saw in 2008 and 9. Plus the virus, the cause is fading. So it's another reason to expect more of a V than a very broad U. I'm going to explain that V in a minute, but if you're thinking this is going to drag out for years, the things we've been talking about so far say that's not the case. And then we look at China, and China is a great test case. Now, bear with me on China, okay? These numbers don't come from China. This resumption of production to 85 to 90%, 95%, that comes from people there. That comes from clients. That comes from trusted advisors and partners who have eyes and ears and feet on the ground in China. And China is back to work. This was not expected to happen for weeks yet, and yet it's happening now, which is very good news. And as China is back up and running, the problem now is they're not getting raw materials from the United States and from Europe. There's a supply chain problem going into China. And their other problem inside China is that they're not getting the orders from the United States. Now, I know you can read today about masks and other things being held up because of regulations and snafus. I mean, that's government, that happens, and they will clear that out. You just can't drop all the regulations and throw all the doors open. But China is not the problem here. China is showing us that you can bounce back from this in pretty short order, as will South Korea and Taiwan and other countries. And the United States will show other nations. Now, it won't be that way in Europe. Europe will be a slower comeback, and they will not reach growth again for many years. They will have an incomplete recovery, but we'll have a complete recovery, as will China. When we look at the debt level of China, they put so much in the way of currency into the stimulus packages. People are worried about their debt. Not a problem for today. Don't have time to talk about it, but you can take that off the plate. Their purchasing managers index have done a very sharp V. Now that's important. Their PMI rebounding that way says, all right, other nations can expect the same thing. We'll go back to work and we're going to see things kind of snap back. Now think of it like a switch. When the virus came, the government hit the switch and turned off the lights. Let's make it actually a large factory. They took the main power breaker and they shut it off and said, all right, we got to shut down until this passes. Now, when you put a factory back online, you do not throw that master switch. If you do, you're going to blow all kinds of circuits. You got to put it on slowly and you have to phase it in, and that's exactly what's going to happen. But when we looked at the United States in terms of, all right, phasing back in, we go back to the early 1980s where there was a big recession. We go back to the middle 1970s where we had an oil crisis. We go to 2015-16, another oil crisis. And we go back to 9/11 and see how does America respond to fears. And what has happened is that as we've looked at those, we see a nation that has a tendency to bounce back. Now, we came out of 2009 rather slowly. 2010 was up, but it was not dramatic. It was not something that was super impressive. And that's why the Fed and the Congress learned from that. But in other cases, we were able to see that fear especially doesn't linger in the mind of the United States. Just think for a minute with me on 9/11. We were worried about opening envelopes because of anthrax. We were worried about would they poison the water supply. We were worried about other planes coming down, handheld missile launchers at the end of runways, let alone people on board the plane. I mean, it was an insane time, but we came right back to work and we were productive and the nation went on. We were forever changed and new industries were born, but we went back. And that's a great lesson for us because there was a lot of fear at that time. So we're going to go back. China's showing us the way. You know some of our thinking. Just a moment on this, just a really quick moment. This is not a power play by China. This is not a stock market grab by China. I don't have time to get into it. Again, you can go to our website for more information on some of these things. I get those emails, just delete them. There's no basis to it. Our leading indicators are showing great things. It is all about leading indicators, and the leading indicators are saying rise. Look at all those words rise. Only one's in decline, and it's one of our financial indicators. We might lose two others, and we probably will lose those two, but most of the leading indicators are saying rise, and that means good news. You have to know how you look at the economy is reliable, and through history, through time, these are reliable leading indicators. This is not fear. This is not noise. These are not algorithms and projections that are brand new because we've never been here before. These have worked in the past. They have worked in the prior circumstances I've talked to you about, and they're working again today, and they say that there's a recovery coming, and it's not far off. So here's the forecast for GDP. This is the rate of growth. The growth number that you hear about in the news. Only this is a deflated number. We don't like using the inflated number. When you see the deflated number, that light blue line or gray line off to the right, that's the forecast. Man, the second quarter is going to be tough. The second quarter is going to feel like the ground just opened up underneath you and the economy is in free fall. There's a lot to do with the virus, obviously. Some of that has to do with oil, and a lot of it has to do with the shutting down of businesses and telling people to stay home. Now, the slope of that looks like 2009. It is a lot like 2009, but notice it doesn't last nearly as long. The trough is a lot higher than 2009. This is not the Great Recession. And then we snap back, and you can see that the rate of growth goes back up to higher than we were before. That means that we're back online and things are going again. Then the slowdown on the other side is a soft spot in the economy. It never reaches zero, which means there's no recession. On a dollar basis, this is what you're going to look at, and I'm going to end with this. The second quarter is going to be a significant fall. We've been forecasting for a long time. First quarter would be down. Now the second quarter is going to follow. Understand it's not going to last. We're going to be in that rising trend because the virus is passing, because of the Federal Reserve Board, because of the CARES Act, because we're Americans and this is how we do things. We're going to find that consumers want to get back out. There are protests growing across the country that says enough of this. Governors are talking about letting us out and letting us go. This is all going to feed into that rising trend. And notice that GDP surpasses the last peak. And then we're going to have just a little softness out there in the future. And that little bit of, there it is, that little bit of softness is not a recession. Don't worry about it. Life is going to be fine. Hang on for one more quarter if you're positively correlated to GDP. If you're more tied to oil, we're going to tell you it's going to last through this year into early 21. If you're more tied to B2B capital goods, whether it's wholesale distribution or whether it's selling them, brokering them, you're going to find that this softness is not going to end in the second quarter. It's going to last into early 21. So the nation, overall GDP, 2 quarters, first quarter, second quarter, we're done. We're on the way out. Industrial production, B2B, it's going to last late 2020, early 21. Thank you very much. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Alan. Good insights, and you actually gave me some hope there. Good questions in the Q&A box. We'll come to those at the end when we get into the Q&A session of the program. So right now we're going to move into our panel part of the program. And so what I'd like to do is to introduce our panel of experts that are going to provide insights into how to navigate our current market and to help you set up yourself and your business to not only survive the current situation, but to come out the other way in a better position. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the panelists one at a time and let them say a few words, and then we're going to get into a short moderated Q&A, and then I'm going to turn it over to Chris to handle the Q&A from the questions that you guys have been entering into the Q&A box. So first up, we have Gisé Romero. Gisé is Assistant Vice President of Commercial Banking at BB&T, which is now Truist Bank. Gisé has over 10 years of experience in the financial services sector, advocating for middle market commercial clients with BB&T, now Truist, by providing intellectual capital to meet their growth and sustainability goals. So Gisé, I'm going to turn it over to you. You need to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Rusty. Let me share. Okay. So thank you everyone for joining us this morning. Like Rusty said, I am Gisé Romero with BB&T, now Truist. So you see 3 logos on your screen. If you weren't aware, we did finalize a merger of equals with SunTrust Bank beginning of December of 2019. So you'll see these logos throughout the presentation. Just know I'm with BB&T and we are merging into Truist with SunTrust. This is essentially an overview of my presentation. We're going to cover a few different topics. So these are some different things that BB&T has been doing within the community for our clients and for our teammates during the crisis. So big focus, obviously, throughout this presentation is how to maintain your financial strength through the crisis to be bankable and lendable. So the majority of the things you see on here that I touch on that are about Truist Financial Corporation are really the things you need to be focusing on your business. So think about capital, liquidity, and risk management. So first, I'd like to kind of reiterate some of the points that Alan made a minute ago. So the CARES Act Payment Protection Program, it's continuing to accept applications, and as of Friday has extended that to self-employed and 1099 contractors. So as of yesterday evening, there's about 301 billion available of the 349 billion that Congress initially enacted. And they're currently debating on if they should add another discretionary fund to the 349 billion that was originally enacted. Another announcement that was made by the Federal Reserve on the 9th was about $2.3 trillion in stimulus program in a variety of different sectors. The most exciting one, I think, for the majority of you on here would be the Main Street Lending Program, and that's about $600 billion for small and mid-sized businesses. So essentially anyone with 10,000 employees or less than 2.5 billion revenues of 2019 qualifies for this program. Minimum loan amount is $1 million and maximum is about 25 billion. So even if you've applied for PPP, you still qualify for this program. And then another program, about 500 billion for municipal liquidity facilities. So those two are great programs to look into. Right now, they're not currently open or accepting applications, but something to look into and continue to follow if you're looking for different funding vehicles. So how to maintain that financial strength. So things that banks are looking at, so, think about your liquidity strength, your owner's equity, building out projections, money coming in, money going out, how to really project your account receivables 30, 60, 90 days out. Income statement. So how do you scale your overhead? How do you cut expenses while maintaining production? A couple of different ways that some of my clients are doing that is with work from home capabilities and efficiency. So you can cut expenses, maybe in the office, utilities, spending, things like that, but you're continuing to produce product remotely, and different things like multi-shift structures. So you might be a manufacturer who's has 50 employees normally in the plant, but now has to cut that back to a certain number of employees per square foot. So adding maybe 2-3 shifts throughout the day to make sure that you're keeping your employees safe, but also continuing that production if you are one of those essential businesses. And then another thing is hazard pay. How do you take care of your employees during this time? How do you make sure that you take care of them so that they can take care of your business? Those are kind of some of the things that my clients are doing. And then most importantly, guarantor flexibility and how you as a business owner can support your business. The overall rate environment, obviously very volatile, but key points to take away from this slide: borrowing spreads are continuing to increase for all borrowers, regardless of your credit quality or size of the company. And you are going to start seeing rate floors from a number of institutions. So just be familiar with that information and make sure that you're looking at it, and just be aware that it is something that we're seeing in the market, and we're expecting that to continue. Obviously, at the bottom, you can see a couple of different interest rates, 2-year, 5-year, 10-year. So these are week over week different changes that you can take a look at. And then last slide here is regarding just comparing 10-year Treasury, LIBOR, and Fed funds. You can see the different variants throughout each of them, but they are somewhat correlated, even though historically we might think that LIBOR, Fed funds, the 10-year Treasury might not be related. They do have a bit of a correlation. So with that, I look forward to your questions after the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Hisei. A lot of good information there, and just a reminder that we will make Hisei's slides available along with the other slides at the end of the market, so you can study the detail that was on those slides. All right, next up we have Clay Gaskamp. Clay is the regional sales manager for Insperity. Clay has been with Insperity for 17 years and is dedicated to helping people succeed by increasing their effectiveness by coaching and assisting performance within the business. Clay's goals are to coach his sales team to exceed through collaboration, strategy, and planning. His skills for developing strategy with executives that have small businesses grow, help small businesses grow, has proven to help some of Texas's best small businesses achieve their goals. So Clay, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks very much, Rusty. Appreciate the opportunity. As I begin, I wanted to bring up that Alan talked about how do we bounce back quickly after we get through this. One of the things in Insperity, we believe that everything starts with your people, our people, and that's how we take the first step forward to bounce back. How do we get our people ready to roar? What do we do going forward to put the pieces in place so our people are ready to get back? So I'm going to go over a little bit about taking care of your people through pandemic. How do we lead through a pandemic? What are key business considerations? And then Q&A will be a little bit later. One of the things I always start with is, how do we lead through the pandemic? What do we do as leaders? This is a business disruption that has put all of our emotional, social, and economic functioning to a test. As a leader, this would be a time to think about how we respond to COVID-19 crisis. It says more about who we are and how we lead than it does the state of the pandemic, which is a card we've been dealt. During these uncharted times, everyone's emotions are on high. As leaders, we must be compassionate to everyone around us. We must listen with straight intent. When I'm hearing concerns from my employees during this time, that teammate is not only the only person in this virtual room, but they're the only person in this world. We have to show that level of compassion to help people get through it. The dedicated listening and understanding the individual's point of view makes the interaction more meaningful. And honestly, today, a lot of people are looking for a little more interaction with isolation. Our care as a leader is what we show first. By starting with care, our teammates know that they and their families matter. In turn, they are brought in to the company's mission a little bit tighter. The energy level of the teammates will improve during this time, and the teammates will be ready to get back to work. Being a part of a team is something I've always thrived on. I was in team sports throughout college at a competitive level, always maintaining the ability to help the team win. When we include our teammates or employees within a team, they feel part of something larger than themselves. And during this time, that is needed more than ever. So when leading through pandemic, we want to create normalcy to alleviate fear. The first step in doing that is to create a simple schedule. People look for normalcy and consistency. Everyone is looking for normal. By creating some schedule of communication and being very consistent in your communication as a leader, your employees now have something to look forward to. It's about our people. We start with showing empathy, gratitude, and optimism. It's easy for a lot of us leaders to lead with our heart. When we believe in what we do and we believe our people are going to get through this, it's no longer a script. It's what we feel, it's how we live, it's how we work. It also makes it easier. We are all individuals. We're all vulnerable, but we're all in this together, not as managers and subordinates, but as teammates on the same team. During times of external stress, it is when leadership helps get us through this. External stress is something that we did not create. None of us looked into 2020 and said this would be the plan for 2020. Work from home and what we've been dealt is where we're at. But as leaders, that's how we're gonna get through this better. We must lead our people, build and maintain trust while doing so. All this uncertainty, people are gonna look to you. When they look to you through even the lens of a camera, lead them with confidence, lead them with gratitude, but lead them with appreciation. Understand what they're going through and help them. Recently, I had the fortunate ability to talk to all of the producers within the company who have started within the business within 18 months. If you are not reassuring your new employees with your culture, with your business, you're not preparing to get out of this. People that have experienced and worked for a business for a long time are very confident. It's proven statistical fact that newer employees are usually a little more pensive in believing with their company's mission, believing how a company works, or believing that we'll get through this at all. I've been fortunate enough to be a part of this organization for 18 years, and we have a lot of resources that we help, not only internally, but our clients with. At Insperity, we practice HR for small and medium businesses, and HR and people services are needed more now than ever. Key business considerations. What we've been working with small, medium business lately is how to do flexible remote schedules. What constitutes employee absence? How do you work within that? More importantly, we've really dove into contingency plans. Now, when you talk about contingency plans, some of the previous speakers will be financial contingency plans. The contingency plans that we deal with are people contingency plans, or how an organizational works. During this time, not everybody can go to work, and how do you do remote work? How do you do basic scheduling or limited scheduling of key employees? Those contingency plans are what we've helped our small business develop during this time of disaster. Also, how do you consistently do internal organization communications? Most people are looking forward to that these days. Unlike in the past where you're getting hundreds of emails a day and it's just another one in the pile, people are looking forward to your internal organization moving forward. So the action items we've been working with, how do you plan to maintain your communications? But more importantly, on the flexible remote schedules, where are you posting it? How are you using time and attendance effectively? How far can you go so that it's communicated? Again, communication is key during a time of uncertainty. Contingency and communications. While entirely remote, it changes. No longer do you have office meetings. We have Zoom meetings like the one we're on. But during these times, we have to have a plan when we go into it. On the IT infrastructure, is your IT infrastructure secure, bandwidth, and accessible for people to work with at home? Our average clients are small, medium business America, and this can be a stress point for them. Not many plan for this, and some only have this available for executives. Over the last few months, you've seen how certain work from home companies, i.e. Zoom, Workspace, and things like that, have gone through the roof on the number of users. So if you're not subscribing to it, we help with people connecting them. And then we've also helped keep the business rolling through standard HR process, payroll, time tracking, even onboarding new employees. Yes, some companies are still growing during this time. A business continuity plan is something that everybody has usually on the shelf. It's in dust. Here in Houston, we use it for when a storm comes. But this is unlike any storm. Usually a hurricane comes, we batter down the hatches, we wait it out, and the sun comes out and we rebuild. During this time, we're waiting for the sun to come out. So it's the continuity plan that not only are we helping small, medium business with, but we're helping with them on the communication to their employees. This gives your employees confidence. It gives your employees confidence in the future of tomorrow. So, in short, what we recommend for our clients to do is follow the daily updates for the Center for Disease Control and the COVID-19 coronavirus. More importantly, lead with empathy, support, and resourcefulness. If you start every conversation with your employees with that, they will remember it and they will become a part of your team. Make deliberate decisions on a case-by-case basis. During this time, everybody has a little bit more time to take a step back from the day-to-day and think strategically. When you think strategically and work on your business, you can get more done when we get back. And lastly, communicate consistently while implementing flexible remote work schedules. This is something that if we don't communicate, if we don't set the expectations, it's difficult for us and our employees to navigate through. Thanks very much for the time.
All right, thank you so much, Clay, for that. Interesting insights. We're all making this up as we go along here, right? So we've got some interesting challenges. So, all right, finally, we have another Clay. This time it's Clay Spitz, and so I'd like to introduce Clay. Clay is the managing partner with Chief Outsiders. Chief Outsiders provides chief marketing officers to mid-sized companies on a project part-time fractional basis to help clients protect their revenue opportunities in difficult times like these and to maximize growth opportunities during the recovery. Chief Outsiders has over 70 highly experienced chief marketing officers across every industry segment. So Clay, I want to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Rusty. Good morning, everyone. There we go. You should be able to see my slides. Nice to be here. Thank you to all of our panelists and moderators who are helping us today, and to TEI for sponsoring this, and all of our sponsors, and to all of you that are attending. I'm glad you're here. What I'm going to talk about is the customer and market side of where we are and how we recover. So I love this quote by John Maxwell: "The pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist expects it to change, the leader adjusts the sails." And you'll see through all my recommendations and discussion here, it's time to start adjusting the sails. This is our take on the Corona curve. Won't go into all the detail, but hopefully we're somewhere along the bottom of this curve and getting ready to restart and be on the road to recovery and eventually some new normal. I believe that this will be a little bit different curve and timeline for different industries and different businesses, but the conclusions are all the same. And I'd like to start with what we're hearing from our own clients. We did an internal survey of our CMOs and the clients that they're working with to understand a little bit about what their thinking is and how optimistic they are, how this has affected their business. And this is very recent. It's 30 different industry segments, about 60 or so businesses. And as you can see, about 65% of our clients have experienced negative to highly negative consequences, some positive and a number neutral. Interesting to me is the optimism level. About 65% of our clients are optimistic, from very to somewhat, and some are still pessimistic. And I think some of that reflects the industries that they're in. And so here's how we're thinking about this. We do think there are three phases. Alan talked some about this at the beginning. There will be some overlap, and it will affect different industries, but the key objective here is to be prepared and on your toes, leading your business into a brighter future. And the preparedness is a key part of that, especially right now. So in the stages, we've all responded. You might have noticed, if you follow us, that we significantly changed our messaging from our website, on our website and in our content, from growth to protecting opportunities, and it'll change again as we start to see recovery. A lot of this is based on insights, and like many businesses, we've been providing assistance wherever we can. That's the response phase. We hope we're in a stabilized phase right now and getting ready to recover, and the stabilized phase is all about planning and preparation, because we do believe that if you respond to the recovery when you see it happen, you'll be behind the curve, and that your competitors who have planned better than you have will be ahead of you. So doing something now and getting ready for the recovery whenever that happens for your business, so you are ahead of the curve, is extremely important. And during that recovery, it may be a pivot. If you're a consumer-facing business that's closed or mostly closed, it may be some kind of grand reopening. But understanding your market, your customers, where they are, how their thinking has changed, will all be critical to that planning. And by the way, Alan didn't say it, and I hope he doesn't mind that I give a little plug to ITR. They have a trends report that comes out monthly that we follow very closely. And they've been offering that with, I believe it's a 90-day free offer. It's an inexpensive way to keep up with what's going on in the economy and starting to see around the corner. And I would recommend that you look into that, check out their website, ITR Economics, and look at the trends report. It is broken down by industries and is very informative. We do believe that there will be winners and there will be losers. That, this is a tentative list, but you can read it for a second while I talk about it. Industries that we expect to be better after the recovery, and some that we expect to be worse, depending on what the new normal is. I don't think anybody knows exactly what the new normal is and where we are prior to a vaccine and maybe where we'll be after a vaccine. But whatever kind of business you're in, you have to prepare for whatever that new near-term normal is, and whatever the long-term new normal might be. So the key strategy here in our parlance, we talk a lot about avoiding, stopping random acts of marketing. In this case, this is really about avoiding random acts of recovery. And how do you do that? Well, we typically have 3 phases that we talk about in building marketing plans, and in this case, in building recovery plans. One is insight. This is highly important to understand the drivers of your success, to understand from your customer's point of view, where they are, what they're thinking about, what their needs are, how their needs may have changed or be changing. Using those insights to develop strategy, tapping into your insights, really informing the critical priorities, and then executing. That's about getting the right things done based on your strategy. And we've developed a checklist, a 12-step checklist that you can get by just Googling Chief Outsider's Recovery Checklist. It's part of a blog. You can also go to our website. You can go to our website and find a tremendous amount of additional information, just scrolling down and looking at the COVID-19 recovery response. So thank you for your time and thanks for being here, and turn it back over to Rusty to handle questions.
Okay, thanks so much, Clay. And, you know, doing Zoom meetings, our phone rings sometimes, and I'm going to let people know that the leaf blowers are outside my house right now. So if you hear a roar, I apologize for that. We're running a little behind on schedule, so I'm just going to ask one question of the panels, and then I'm going to turn it over to Chris to get to the participants' questions here. Just a reminder, if you do have questions, please click on the Q&A box there on your screen and enter the question in the Q&A box, and Chris Ferris from Pierpont is going to be teeing up those questions here in just 2 minutes. So for the 3 panelists, or 4 panelists, including Alan, you know, I like Clay's curve, and I've been using a version of that with all of my clients. I would say 3 weeks ago, we were in that panic mode at the very beginning of that curve, and a lot of people went through that downward, you know, what I call the trough of despair, kind of in the depths of that curve. And most companies, I think, are on that upward swing now, if you will, of that curve that Clay showed. For all of the panelists, what is your advice to, you know, what should you be doing right now in this part of the curve? What's the most important thing that you should be doing right now? And most importantly, what should you not be doing right now in going forward? So he's saying, I'm gonna turn it over to you first. One piece of word of wisdom, if you will.
I think one piece of word of wisdom is just scaling those expensive and knowing how to scale and being able to scale quickly is what you should be looking at as a business owner during this time.
Okay. So managing expenses, managing cash, those sorts of things. Great. Okay. Clay Gaskamp?
I would say setting the expectation of there will be the recovery and we have to be ready. Communicating to your employees what you're doing today is a foundation for tomorrow, and that you are accomplishing something great today. Keep their belief high so that when they get back, they are confident what they're doing and our economy will take off.
Okay, I have a follow-up question for you, Clay.
Sure.
You said in your slide, you know, to lead during this time, right?
Yes.
How do you lead when you don't have all the answers? When you have a,
you know, in times of uncertainty, leading is very difficult. I guess I could compare it back to some of the coaches I had when I played baseball. Nobody knew the outcome of the game, but they still led, because you have to rally people so that they can do better than what they think they can. And so we don't know the exact dates. We don't know this invisible enemy. But what we do know is this will not last forever, and our people will help us rebound.
Great, thanks. And Clay, what do you think? Right now, where we are on that curve, kind of on that upward slope, we hope for most business owners, what should people be doing and not doing during this phase?
I think doing is most importantly planning for the recovery, getting clear insights about how your customer and their needs may have changed, looking carefully at your differentiated value proposition and how you serve your market and your customers, and be ready to pull the trigger to promote that, to be in communication as soon as you think that the time has come to let the market know that you're ready to help them respond.
Great. Thank you so much. And Alan, any words of wisdom from you?
Clay just said it very, very well. Be ready to act. So whatever your company is, you need to have the plan in place now, written up, everybody understanding it. So you're not making it up when you get to the turn, when you get to that inflection point. You just pull it off the shelf, you go to the first page and you go. How are you going to bring your employees back? What stages? How are you going to get to market? What's the messaging that you're going to go to market with? All those things have to be thought through now so that you are ready for that day. Those that wait will be behind their competitors. They'll lose some market share.
Great. Thanks so much, Alan. All right. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to, we have about 10 minutes or so. I'm going to turn it over to Chris Ferris. Chris is the VP of Digital Strategy at Pierpont Communications and is also a lecturer in digital marketing at Rice University. And Chris has been monitoring our questions in our Q&A box. It's not too late to put one in there if you want to put one in there. Chris, take it away.
Thanks, Rusty, and thanks everybody for being here today. And thank you to all the panelists. I was completely captivated by all your presentations, and I felt like it took about 5 minutes, even though we've been talking for more than 50. So well done, everybody. I've been looking at the questions as they've been coming in, and what I'm going to try to do is ask the most broad questions first, and we'll try to answer those, and then we'll try to, if we have time, we'll get to the more specific questions that came through. So one of the, I think one of the most interesting questions that came through was how can you, this is mostly for Alan, I think, how do you justify the patterns, or how do you reconcile the patterns of past economic changes with the presence of these two big black swan events? And so if this one is different, how do you use the past patterns to predict future activity in the economy, Alan?
In-depth question. Short answer would be you take the worst case. Let's say that you look at retail sales after a previous black swan event and you saw what happened, then you go, all right, let's make it bigger than that. So you're starting off with the worst case and you know it's going to be even more severe. And you also look at people's reactions and businesses' reactions in the past. So even though it's a double black swan, that doesn't change who we are and how we're likely to behave going forward. So that's the short answer to that question. Chris?
Cool. Anyone else have any follow-up on that, or should I move to the next question? All right, this is a very practical question. Again, probably back to you, Alan. And this is a question that my wife asked me the other day when we were talking about this. When the Fed pumps money in to the economy, where does the money come from? Are they just printing more money? Is this, like a Weimar Republic thing, or how does that actually work?
That's exactly what it's like. It's magic. It's not real money. It's digital. It's the digital printing press, if you will. And that's why it's called fiat currency. And that's why there's a real risk of it creating large amounts of inflation later as they go to sanitize their balance sheet. So
that was actually a follow-up question. Sorry, Alan, about inflation. Is that a worry? And are there things being done to mitigate the dangers of inflation?
No to the second question, and worry, yes, but not for right now. That's a future us problem. And so we'll get past this, and in a few years, we'll start seeing inflation, producer price indices first, and then the CPIs begin to heat up. It'll be increased global demand. It'll be higher labor rates, part of that, plus the fiat currency curse that will come around. For those of us that are old enough, you remember what it was like in the 1970s in terms of inflation, towards that end of the spectrum, not like the early 80s, late 70s, where it was really high, but where it's consistent nagging inflation that'll drive up interest rates as we get to the second half of this decade.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
One of the other good questions was, where did that one go? Hold on a second. You mentioned Europe as well. Europe has a very large economy, but you also mentioned that you thought that Europe might actually have a slower recovery than the United States and China. And how will that potential protracted slow recovery in Europe impact the US economy, commodity prices, and things like that? And how much of a drag will that be on the US economy?
It won't be so much a drag on the U.S. economy as it won't be a lot of help to the U.S. economy. We'll still export goods there. It's just Not as much, and the same problem will exist for China. Europe is a very large client of China too, in many ways equal to the United States in size. As far as the first question, first part of the question goes, commodity prices. Sure, it'll keep commodity prices from popping real quickly. It'll keep commodity prices from spiking, which will be considered a good thing by most people. So that's its impact. It doesn't keep them soft, but it keeps them from moving up sharply at the same. So nice even rise in commodity prices. Everybody's happy. Thank you, Europe.
All right. What are the worries of the politicization of opening the economy at a certain pace? There seems to be a little bit of push and pull between some red states and blue states, and some governors in certain areas of the country versus others. What is the political risk that you see in either hurting or hampering the economy and the recovery?
I'm an economist and not a political science major. I think the political risks are pretty straightforward. If it goes well, whoever thought of it, whichever party they were with, they get the credit. If it doesn't go well, the other party will harpoon them on a daily basis for years to come. You know, I think that's it, but there are other people on the panel that probably understand politics better than I do, because I'm just a simple economist.
Does anybody else want to tackle that on the panel? They're all like, nope, not going to touch that one. Nope, they're all staying on mute. Okay, fair enough. I'm trying to understand this question. What impact will the price of oil have on all of this? Saudi Arabia and Russia seem to have come to some sort of a détente recently. We don't know if that'll hold, but oil prices are really low. And I know this is a very Houston specific question, but what impact will the price of oil have on all these things moving forward?
Price of oil is likely to stay soft. That's part of our thinking in the forecast that I came up with today. And the oil industry is not a large part of GDP, but it is a large part of industrial production. So if you remember, I said industrial production would be in recession. The 12-month moving average would be in decline into early 21. That's one of the reasons why. Oil is important to industrial production. It's favorable for producers, but it's a large enough segment of the economy. I'm talking about like producers like the chemical industry, et cetera. But it's a large enough part of the economy that it'll create a drag on industrial production. That's its impact, and it's factored in. And the détente, it didn't last a day really, because while Saudi Arabia said they would cut prices, the very next day they cut production, excuse me. The very next day they cut prices. Even though they're going to cut production, they cut their prices for sales into Asia because they want to get that market share away from Russia. So there's a ceasefire, but there's still a lot of fighting going on behind the scenes. This will be interesting.
All right, I have one last question, and then Rusty, I'll hand it back over to you so you can wrap us up. This is, again, more of a technical, practical question. So last week, the Fed offered trillions of dollars to go back into Main Street. Again, how does that work? You said a little bit earlier that it's a little bit of magic, where they just sort of, they print more digital money. But for a layperson like me, how does that actually work? How does the money get into the hands of small businesses?
Through loans, and I bet you Ms. Romero has a really good answer for that. So can I punt over to her, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right, Alan. It's using banks and financial institutions to, distribute those funds through the same way the PPP program is working right now. I'm going to assume the program is still in its early stages. There's a lot of institutions that don't know if they're going to participate or not. I would say just keep an eye on it and make sure you're aware if your institution is going to be participating or not.
Great, thanks. Thanks for all the questions. Sorry we didn't get to all of them, but we had a pretty tight schedule this morning, and I'm going to hand it back over to you, Rusty, to wrap us up.
All right, thank you so much, Chris. Chris, I think, had the hardest job of all of us today, because we can all prepare ahead of time and prepare our remarks, but Chris had to work in real time here. So thank you so much for volunteering to do the hard work there. I'd also like to thank all of our panelists. I'd like to thank Alan as well from ITR as well. And also the TEI, so the Entrepreneurship Institute. Bob Rodenbaugh, you guys can't see him today. He's hiding here in the background, but he's been instrumental in helping us organize this. So kudos to Bob, and also all of the Houston board members who you should see on your screen right now. You know, and I'm going to leave you with a final thought. I had one of my best mentors when I used to work for Compaq. The guy that hired me at Compaq, actually, his name was Vic Mahadevan, and he had a saying that he used to always say. He says, "Rusty, there's 4 types of people in the world. There's those who make it happen, those who help make it happen, those who watch it happen, and those who wonder what happened." Right. And so we as business owners want to be part of at least the first 2 groups. Really, we want to be the first one. We want to be the ones that make it happen. The world has changed. It is going to be a new normal at some point, and we want to be the leaders and the ones that take advantage of the opportunities that come out of this. We certainly don't want to be in the ones that watch it happen and the ones that wonder what happened. So thank you also to all of the attendees today. We appreciate you being here and spending an hour with us this morning, and we'll let you get on with your day. And one other final comment is, as you know, we do the President's Forum every year in the fall. And as of right now, we are still planning to do the President's Forum on October the 7th. The invitations will go out. You see the sponsors on the screen. Whoever invited you to this event will also be the person that you go to get invited to the October event, which is invitation only. So we hope to see all of you at the President's Forum on October 7th, currently scheduled for the Briar Club again. So and unless that changes sometime in the next few months. So thank you very much for attending.
And Rusty, a last final reminder that everyone who registered will receive a copy of the, or a link to the video that's being recorded. And so look for that in the next couple of days coming from TEI along with the slides.
Okay, thanks, Clay.
Thanks everybody, and we're out.